So this is just a little log for myself. Essentially, I'm going to pivot from being a software engineer based in London to essentially becoming a quantitative developer. I reckon it'll take about 6 months. I've built some stuff already just for like Monte Carlo simulations, just predicting different stocks. So amongst not only being currently employed as a lead software engineer, I will pivot to a quantitative developer. Obviously, I'm filling in the gaps in my knowledge, such as just getting really good at leetcode for interview prep, but moreover, econometrics, macroeconomics, and quantitative developer related building of tools. So, build a web view, build a native app written in C++ that just simulates Monte Carlo for a specific stock, adding configuration, do options, put heat map spreads and stuff like that. So this is just the start of my journey, and it's just logging today, me doing 2 leetcode questions over my lunch break. So let's get started. Just play some tunes. Just make sure it's working. Cool. Today, me doing 2 leetcode questions over. So it's working. So the way I like to do leetcode is I port everything over to its own thing, to its own folder, so I can just run it natively. And I can also, the reason why I don't like doing it within like an IDE like this is I don't know if you can debug in leetcode, in neetcode. There's Vim key bindings, which is cool. But I would like to just debug. So debugging actually helps you figure out what you're doing. Or if you've done something wrong with the logic you've implemented. So in documents, GitHub, leetcode, practice, in arrays, cd leetcode. Have I got another? Leetcode practice. I have a repository somewhere which I was doing some work on prior. Just wonder where it is. Monte Carlo, recent, leetcode practice. CD leak might be parent. Cool. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna duplicate. I'm currently doing neetcodes 150 questions, and at the moment I've pretty much just done this on my own time, but I'm almost finished the arrays and hashing. For the most part, I can get to a solution at this point without having to look at any help. Some of them say they're medians, but they're not really. That's just leetcode. Contains duplicates easy, valid anagrams easy, two sums easy. Top k frequent elements I struggled with a little bit, and I think this is mainly due to having it's just interesting that you needed to have a second array for a counter, and you can use bucket sort. So obviously I didn't know what bucket sort was and how to apply it, so this took I need a bit of assistance here. Encode and decode, super easy. Product of array except self was not too bad. I imported a numpy function to help do the product sum of a array. Valid Sudoku was quite challenging actually, because I have never played Sudoku, so I had to learn the rules. I got the first 2 out of 3. So this is the solution I imported, but the first 2 conditions, so each, obviously Sudoku, right? You row, column, and then the 3x3 grid. I got these 2, but I struggled significantly with the third condition. I realized how the actual solution was is they just subset this into their own sub for loops, right? Whereas I had one parent one, I tried to do conditions there, but it obviously didn't work out once you have a 3x3 subset grid. So you actually see my solutions. You can't see previous submissions, but I essentially didn't have this, and I needed some assistance with this. So yeah, I'm getting significantly better at leetcode the more you do it, right? Trial by fire. And every question is unique. So some of them you might do better, and some of them you do not as good as in. So today's one is longest consecutive sequence. I've kind of attempted this one before a couple times, but I couldn't get anywhere. And I only spent, 20 minutes on this? 10 minutes? Right, chucking stuff through, checking it. But I'm actually going to attempt it today. And I'm going to set a timer for 40 minutes and see how successful I can get doing this. Roughly, give or take, that's how much you want to spend per leet code. Obviously, be faster if you can. 20 minutes would be ideal. So I've just set a timer for 40 minutes and we'll get started. So what I'm going to do actually is just port all of this over to its own thing here. So just so I can do this locally and use my debugger. Longest sequence. So I have this already set up, which is great. And I might have been messing around a bit before. Yeah, cool. So here we are. Longest sequence, and with the question here as well. So essentially, given an array of integers, return the length of the longest consecutive sequence. I'm just going to pause my music, actually. I can't focus. Given an array of integer nums, return the length of the longest consecutive sequence of elements that can be formed. A consecutive sequence is a sequence of elements which each element is exactly one greater. So essentially, yeah. If we're going to go and check here, right? This is the array of the input we've given us, and the longest consecutive sequence is 4, right? Being 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is 4, right? So, and then you have your input here as well. Same thing, 7 because you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Including 0 as well. So it turns to 7. The constraints are from 0 to 1,000, and the integers must hold basically all negative numbers and all positive numbers for the most part, just a large range. So let's get started. So if I pull this over here, we'll pull the question to here so we can just have them together. My initial thought, anytime you play with arrays, is can you sort them, right? So normally my thinking through leetcode questions is always have 2 passes of initial thought space stuff. Essentially means I just think about things twice. So we need to sort the array and then go and increment a counter. That's how I initially would think, right? You can just loop through normally and check if the next one is there. I think sorting it would be a good way, right? If you sort the array, you just count the next one. If it breaks, then you know you're not correct. So what I would do is go through and sort. So let's do sort the array. Then we can init a counter, right? We can create a counter, and if next number in nums is the current number plus 1, then increment counter, right? And we know to stop going to the next one, right? So the condition, right, is to stop checking the next number when current index equals the length of the list minus 1, right? Just because we don't want to index out of the array. So if we're here, if we're at 5, or if we're at 4, right, we check the next one as 5. If the next number, right, is the final length of the array, we want to stop there because then we'll index out, right? And then we'll have an out of index error. This is my first thought. I have thought about this a little bit before, so I kind of think this is the best way to go about it, because if you have this, so this is actually my second pass, right? Thought space idea, which is what I'm calling it, just my second idea, right? Which is a bit more refined. My original idea, when I had thought about this a little bit, it's a bit cheating because I thought about it before, but the first idea is to loop through the array and then produce a second array with the sequential order, right? The issue with this is you're almost having to loop through twice, which means the log n complexity is a bit more shit, purely for the fact that you're having to loop through something twice. So as you increase the array, it grows a shit exponentially more because you have 2 loops, right? And you're also having to manage a second array as well. and the current sequence integer. So the best way is if you just sort it and then just go to the next one, right? So if you have 2, so this will be sorted, right? So this will turn into a sorted array that looks something like 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 10, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, and then blah, 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 right? It'll just go through next number, correct, 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 correct. If there's a break, so it's 6 is not here, then that's it. You can return the length or the counter of this, right? Yeah, there's a couple of different ways we can do this as well. We can return a second sequence array, right? So sequence array, and then you just populate. If it's true, append, 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 append. And if not, 10 is obviously doesn't come after 5. It should be 6, so we don't append it. And then you can just grab the, you can return, right, the length of the sequence array as the return statement for longest consecutive function. Which is honestly how I think is the best way to do this. So if we give an input here, right, so I reckon let's try the second idea first. If not, we can always fall back on our first idea. So I'm just going to keep the code comments up there. So what we're going to do is we need to loop through the nums list, right? So for the number in nums, in this case, I want to keep a track of the current counter, right? So we know to check the next one, right? So what I would do is for I and number in enumerate nums, right? And what this does is it essentially means, and just stop an error, I is actually the current index, right? So this can also be called index to make it more clear. And we're going to loop through, right, nums and keep track of the counter, right? That's what this is doing, right? So we're saying for track the current index and give me the current number in nums. So what we can do is we can print, just to show you, right? We can print the current index as index, and then we can also print the next number as number, right? And if I run my debugger, or the compiler rather, you can see down here we have our answer, right? The first index 0, 2, 20, and here we go. But obviously this is not sorted, right? Because we want to go through and check the next one. So we can sort the array. So there's a couple of different ways we can do this. I'm going to try to check the sort function at it, and we'll see how we can get on with this, right? So we actually need to sort the array, right? Sort the array. So once we've looped through the array, before we even loop, we should probably sort this, right? So we need to go through and sort the array. Now what we can do is I'm going to clone this just to make it super clear and make things single-lined. Not single-lined. I'm going to have a sorted array, right, equals nums.copy. And the reason why we do this is Python will, if I didn't do this, right, Python would make a reference to nums, right? It would point to nums, so you change the origin of I, which you don't want to do, right? So let's just make a copy. And now, right, if I go here and port this down here and replace number in the sorted array, right, and I run, you can see now we're just going through and looping through the sorted array, right? Now we need to sort the array. So I'm going to try and do, let's just check. I actually don't know how we sort an array. I think there might be a function call for it, Python sort array. There's a sort function, and I wonder if it will sort it. Yeah, so you check the unordered list, and then you hit sort, right? So sorted, is it dot sort? So sorted array dot sort. And now if we run the compiler, as the index increments, we can see it is now sorted, right? 2, 3, 4, 4, 5. So now we need to start having conditions, right? So what we can do is we can have a second array we can manage, or you can increment a counter. Because I want to show this visually for myself, right, and the interviewer, if this is one of the LeetCode mediums that they give, I'm going to make another one called sequential or sequence array. Sequence array. and that is initialized as nothing. And what we're going to do is now we're going to have our check, right? So if the current number is not, so we need to have a start, right? So if we always need to populate the first one because that will always be true if there's something. So if, right, so we need to, the first condition, right, is to check if the index is 0, populate, if the length, I'll just write it out actually in code, if the length of sequence array is not equal, right, to 0, to 1 rather, and, right, so we can populate this like this, and, right, index equals 0, then, why is this and coming up? If, maybe, I wonder if we need to populate it like this, if it's being funny. Hopefully this and sign will work, right? So if the length of the current sequence array is not equal to 1 and the index is 0, populate the current number to the sequence array. Append number, right? And what we can do is we can go ahead and we can print out the sequence array to see if this has worked. So we just want to populate the first value if nothing is there, right? So sequence array is 2, right? Which is actually what we want. So we've now sorted the array and we've done the first condition, which is check if there's nothing in it, then populate. The second condition is now, right, condition 2, is to now check the next number in the array, right? So we can have a thing called the next number in array value, set that to the sorted array, right, of counter plus 1. But we know we can't, or index rather, but we know we can't just declare this, right? Because what happens if we're at the end, right? We actually get an index out of length, right? So what we can do is we can check this, right? So once we delegate this, right, we can break the array, right? So we're going to say if next number in array sorted array, so let's do next index, right? So next index equals the current index plus 1, right? And we're going to say if next index is greater, right, or equal to the length of the sorted array, then we break, right? Because we don't want to continue, right? Because if the next index, right, is greater than the length, then that's not what we want to do. So also I can also just print something to say next index out of bounds of array. And you can actually show this because you can say something like out of index, and then you say the next index, right? And then you can also provide the current index, which actually I should probably do it in order, right? So we have the current index, right? Or just index. Set this to index, right? So next index is out of bounds because 6 is the current index, right? Which is the length. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 7 would actually be the next index, which means it's out of bounds. So if it is out of bounds, just break and stop the operation here, right? So you have a condition to stop the operation, right? And this checks every single time. And what we can do is we can also print something here to say this should not run, and this should not run never runs, because it breaks here, right? Which is what we want. So we have a condition right here. So let's add some code comments. We're going to loop through the nums sorted array, right? This is just a print statement. And these should not run, happens after, right? Because it doesn't run, this should not run after the index. So we're actually correct, right? So we have a init the array, right? So we're going to initialize the init the first value in the array, right? And then we're going to init, so we're going to initialize the next index and check if out of bounds. So now we've set up these two conditions, right? Now let's actually do the math and check this, right? So condition 3, which is our computation logic, right? What we're actually doing is we're going to say, so we have our next index and we have our current index and the number, right? So we're going to say if, so we're going to have the next number. So we're going to say if the index, if the number, which is the current index, right? If the number we should actually check if the next number, right? So if the current next number should equal to the current number plus 1, right? And the reason why is because, for example, if we have the sorted array, right, which is 2, the next number should be 3, right? So so now we have our next number, right? The computation logic, right? Check next number. Number is equal to the next index in sorted array. Computation logic, this is what we're doing, right? And so here we can check, right? If, right, the next number is equal to, right, sorted array, so is equal to the sorted array at, so the sorted array is actually, we're indexing through this array. So if the sorted array, right, at the next index, or, right, so we can do an or, so we can populate this within a bubble, going to print nothing here, so there's an error out, or the sorted, just going to bubble this out so it looks a bit easier to read, because the thing is here, right, we're checking if the next number in the sorted array, right, if the next index in the sorted array is the next number, or if it's also the same one, right? So what we can do here is if, so one of the conditions we actually need to check, right, is we can actually do the condition here as well, right? So if next number equals sorted array index, right? So if that's true, if this is true, right? Don't need all these bubble brackets. Now why is this giving an error? Expected. If next number, oh, equals because that's it, initializing. So if the next number is equal to the sorted array next index, right? And in this case, our next number would be this, and our sorted array would be the next index in. Then sequence array dot populate, so dot append, right, the current number that we have, right? We do need a condition to say if the sorted array at the next index, right, is equal to the number, we can just break and move on, right? So check if it's out of bounds. So I make this a bit more clear, right? If next number, next index equals the same as current number, just skip, because we don't care. We care about how many in a sequence, right? Skip. Current iteration, right? And the other condition is that if the next number is the next index in the sorted array, then append this to the sequence array, right? So sequence array append and print. So hopefully this should work. There's probably going to be errors. There always are errors when you do problem style questions like this, but we can send our debugger and have a look. So I'm going to clear out the terminal and debug. And this has caused an issue, right? So it's gone through 2, 3, 4, right? And if we check, we have 2, 3, 4, and it stops, it breaks, because we do have 5 as well, which is stopped. And it's appended the 2, 2, and 3. So what we can do is we can actually chuck in a debugger statement, right? So I want to debug the sequence array. So let's jump through. I already know what the error is, but we'll just jump through just so I can show this. So sequence array, right, is nothing. This is our sorted array. We are index is 0 and our number is 2. That makes sense. We're at 2 here, right? Our sequence array is 0, our index is 0, so cool. So this is true. So we append the current number. Then we jump through. Next index is the current index plus 1, which our index is 0. That makes sense. Right, if we check our debugger here and close the questions out, the next index, which I'll probably have to jump through after this, is 1, current index 0, that's cool. Current number is 2. So if next index is less than the length of the sorted array, right? And if this is true, we break. If not, continue, right? So our next number is the current number plus 1, right? And our current number is 2, so our next number should be 3. Next number is 3, so that's perfect. So now we move on to our conditions. So we know all of this code's okay up here, right? So the next condition we're checking is if the next index is the same as the current number, right? So if the sorted number equals number, so if the next index equals to the number, right? So the next index is 1, which is not true, is the next number, right? Oh, so the next index is 1, number is 2. So if I jump the sorted array at the next number, this should not break. Yeah, it doesn't break because the number is 2, right? So our last condition next number is next in the sorted array. So the next number is 3, right? Sorted array index is 1. This makes sense. And we're going to append number. We don't want to append the current number. We want to append the next. Yeah, so we do append the current number. That works. If we jump to the next one again, we have our sequence array is 2. Now, why is it populating twice is the real question, right? Next index is 2. So sequence array is populated 2, which is correct. And it should go again, right? So we have 2, 3, 4, right? And it's ended, right? So if we jump back up and run this again, we're populating, right? Something that's not correct. So we undebug that. Let's actually have a look at what's going wrong, right? So we clearly are printing out the correct numbers, right? 2, 3, 4, and it should go up to 5. I might be indexing 1 less, but that's okay, right? So let's have a look at our conditions, right? What we can do is we can print out everything that we know after a run to see if that run's correct, right? So if it's the first value in the array, that's fine, append that, right? Then the next thing we do is we check the next index and the next number, right? So what we can do is, let's just print these out, right? So we can just have a check, right? In this case, our current index. So we're really close. We just have a couple of bugs we need to fix, right? So if we check the current index, so we have index, we have our next number, we have our current number, we have our next number, or we should keep it by next index rather, and we have our next number. Let's debug this together, right? So we have our index is 0, our number is 2. Let's add some spaces here to make this more readable. Cool. So we have our index is 0, and we can also refrain from printing the current index because we've done it over there. Cool, right? So we have our index 0, our number 2, next index 1, next number 3. So this is actually fine, right? We're actually doing this properly. It's the appending that seems to be an issue, right? And then next index is 1, the number is 3, right? So we're at 1, 3, next index is 2, number is 4. So this logic actually is working fine. It's the appending to the array which seems to be the issue, right? Which is here, right? So if the next number, right, equals to the sorted array of the next index, we append. This makes sense, but it's clearly not working as we intend, right? So let's have a think about this. I might remove this for now and append it just because I think this may be causing issues, right? Let's just have a try. Oops. So let's try this out, right? Cool, so now it's iterating all the way. So that break was causing an issue because it breaks the loop instead of continues. What we really should have done is something like this. Instead of it breaking and it going index out of bounds, right? Next index is out of bounds, it breaks, so cool. We actually don't need to do this, right? Here we go. So now we're indexing properly. It's just our append that we need to fix, right? So now we're going up to 5, and this is correct, right? Because we have 5 numbers, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Index 1, so we go through. We are missing 1 index, I think. Should be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But we do check the next one before we break, right? So we still grab the index 6 and next index 7, but we know that the index is out of bounds. So cool. So we're on a really good spot. So we solved one bug, which is great. So now we need to check what is going on here, right? So what we need to do is check if the next number is equal to the sorted array. So if we have the, actually this should be right. We've append 2, 3, and 4, right? 2, 3, and 4, but we're missing 5, which seems to be the issue, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're actually missing 6 as well. So if we don't do this, right? Let's rewrite this condition. Because as of now, we're doing a good job, right? We need to check, right? Condition to check. Right? We just need a condition to check if the next number in the array is a sequence. To check if the next number in the array is the next index. in sorted. It's actually better if I do next number is next index. It's rather a condition to check if the next index is the next number in sequence array. Right, that's all we need to do. So we know, right? 1, next number is 3, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, right? 4, 5, this is fine. 5, 6, right? So if sequence array, right? Well, we have our next number, right? So if sequence array of the next index is the same as our next number, right? Print true. And just add a tracer log. So let's see if this is true, right? List index, if condition next index is break, and so we're getting list index out of range because I'm assuming when it runs to the end, right, of the next index. So break and set next index. Set next index equal to index.copy. If sequence is number and sequence array next index, I'm just trying to clear this error essentially. List index out of range. Why is it out of range? List index is out of range for the next index. That's not true on the first run though, right? If I run this as is, the first one's not running. Print the current number if sequence array at, let's also print the sequence array. If the next index is out of bounds, break. Increase the next number. Let's print out all the next numbers in this case, right? So what I'm going to do is actually check if we can actually print this out, right? So we're going to do sequence array at next index. Let's just see what happens with this, right? I'd be quite curious. Still index out of array, but I've checked it. What about sequence array of the current index? What is our, how big is our sequence array? Ah, because it's checking on the first pass, that's why. Right, because there's nothing in it. Two, that's cool. Let's print out sequence array. If sequence array, if the sequence array is greater, I see, because it's set to nothing, right? So if we print this sequence array now, for example, it's only 2, right? If we print the sequence array, there's only 2. That's why we can't index the next one, because the next one doesn't exist. So a condition is we need to check if sequence array, or rather the length, right, is less than is greater than 1, right? And if this is true, print out the sequence array of the next index. This should work. Yeah, so it does work, right? It goes through, prints the next sequence array here, else didn't work. So if length of sequence is greater than 1, print didn't work. Why don't we actually print out the, let me track this in the debugger. We're really close to the end. We're just having a little bit of an issue here, right? Let's debug the print the if statement. Sequence array. Oh, because we're not appending. That's why, right? Is less than 1. Oh, I see. So the error. We're really close. We just need to do the appending, right? Let's check how long we've been working on this leetcode question for. We've been working on this leetcode question for almost 30 minutes now. 40 minutes. We just need to work on the append, right? Let's check my messages. We just need to append. I think that's it, right? Because if we print if we run this without debugger, we actually do get the next number, right? 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, boom, this works, the current number. And we check if it's out of bounds too. So we actually have the logic, we just need to append. Sequence array. If the next index is less than the sorted array, print this. If it's anything else, next number is number plus 1, and sequence array dot append the current number. Is that it? 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5. 2, 3, 3, 4, 5. 10 is not right. Duplicates are not great. Let's hide these ones. I don't think these are needed. 2, 3, 3. So this is fine. We didn't need this. So I overcomplicated it a little bit. 2, 3, 4, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. 10 is not right. So now we do the check, right? So we're just appending everything before it's out of bounds, I think. If it's less, then that's fine. Don't do the next one. Sequence array dot append. Then we need to do the check, right? If sequence, if number, if next number is equal to the sequence array of the next index, or if the next, if the current number is equal to the sequence array of number is true, and then if next number if the current number is equal to the sequence array index of the next index, print out it is a duplicate. List index out of range. So the timer's done and we've hit 40 minutes, but we're unable to do the very last, right? So I would have failed this on a normal test. So we're indexing out, which is confusing because we tell it to break if it does, right? If the current number is the next, I wonder if I just keep a counter instead of appending. I don't think it matters though. Index, the next index is indexing out. If the next index is less than or equal to sorted array, break. If it's anything else, so we're indexing out next index. If next index is greater than, how is it indexing out? Next index is index plus 1, right? I think I know what's wrong. We're indexing it before we can allow it to do that. Let's start again, right? So for index number in enumerate. Oh, it's a bit of a tricky one actually. Let's see if I can get the solution. If the current if the current index, we have to check the index next number though, equals index plus 1. We have to declare this, but we need to check if it's out of bounds, right? So if the next index is index plus 1, let's print the next index then, right? Only if it's less than the out of bounds range. So if next index is less than equal index is greater than the length of the original nums array, then print that, hey, this is out of, we're going to print an error, out of index. Next index is out of index, or is out of array length. Next number is not defined. So when the index is out of array length, we just keep it like that. If next index is greater than or equal to nums, and break. If next index is less than, we can just do anything else. Then print the nums array of the next index. and we don't want the nums array, we want to be sorted. Cool, so that actually works. 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20. We're only printing the next one. If sequence array, if the length of the sequence array if we're on the first index, actually, if index equals 0, then sequence array dot append the current number. So we're not happening with nothing. And what we can also do is check the numbers after that. So if the next thing, so if next number, if sorted array, if sorted array at the next index equals the next number, and next number then sequence array dot append the next number. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is there 6? Cool. So that was it. So it took a little bit longer. I think it took 45 minutes, which is a little bit longer. I think I was overcomplicating it with too many conditions. Actually, I should probably submit my answer. See if it works through all the test cases. I think, so the change that I actually had made that had made quite a big difference was the fact that it was skipping the first iteration and duplicating it. So now, regardless, it checks if the index is 0 every single time, which is probably important, I think. Purely for the fact that you don't skip an iteration over. So we actually did come to the solution ourselves, which is cool. I'm going to save this to debug in case it's wrong, and we want to return the sequence array, and we can do this for now. So yeah, that's our answer. Took a little bit longer to come to, because I just a bit of brain fog after working all day, but that's okay. If I run this, your type is output, but the type is int, so we can just return the length of this. Cool, so our case 1 and case 2 worked. However, the real test is the other test cases, right? So yeah, if nums is 0, what happens, right? So we can also check that as another test, right? So if index is 0, add that. Then just add the other conditionals, right? So if number, or actually if the length is 0, we actually just do it up here even. If our nums length, if nums equals length of nums, if this is length of nums equals 0, then return 0. If nums length of nums equals 1, return 1. Hopefully this should, and we just want to return the length of the array. They always catch you out with these silly little things. I mean, they're not silly, they're actually edge cases, right? But run, So the first ones work. Let's see if everything else works. Your output is 9, expected is 7. So we passed the 15 test cases. We're now running into issues. So let's just try this, right? Let's have a look at this. Minus numbers, I wonder if they're causing issues, right? My output was 9 and the expected was 7. So let's take this out, right? Let's have a try and have a look. So we'll debug it, right? The expected output is 7, right? Right? We don't need to know this, but we can just do this. So we run this. We would just return. Let's also then print out the return value. Right? So it's 9 when it should be 7. So let's count, right? It should be -1. The next one is not true, so it breaks. Oh, I see. So my code checks, right, from the first index, and if the next one is true, it breaks, but it doesn't check for the other numbers. This is kind of a tricky one, right? So, do I have paint or draw or anything? Draw. Because essentially, I wonder if I can open TLD draw. So the issue, this is just a bit of a meme I was making. The issue I'm having is if we have an array of numbers, right? We have like 1, 2, 3, -1, 4, 5. What my code does is it will go and say, okay, this is the counter's 1 now. The counter's now 2. The counter's now 3. Because this is not true, it just returns 3. When in reality, there's 4 and there's 5. So I'm thinking actually now that the solution can be used to use a hash map. Oh no, but we sort the array though. That's the thing. This is not true because we end up sorting the array, right? So, I mean, I didn't need to delete all of this, but this will. Oh yeah, because we sort the array, it should turn -1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm not sure why this is causing an issue, so we can have a check, because regardless, this is not true. But it doesn't matter because it checks the other ones. Is that true? I don't know. Right, what if this is the case, right? And what we need to do is we'll bring our print statement back. This is why we kept it in, right? Our next number calculation is breaking. Let's debug why, right? Next number equals the current number plus 1. Why don't we print out the current number and then the next number. And I can debug. Let me clear. So the current number is 3, the next number is 4, but why is this not populating? Because I didn't put it here. Apologies. Zero, 0, that's fine. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. It's fine. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. One, 2, 3. No, so it'd be 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Why 7 though? the sorted array, if we print the sorted array, just outright for the first time, this is what we get, right? So we get 0, 1, that's not right, because they're not in sequence, right? So we don't populate that to the array, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it should be these that get appended. What does my sequence array look like? That's the real question, right? So why don't we print out the sequence array? Maybe not on every run. It's probably not a good idea. Why don't we just print the sequence array after it's run? Where's 3 then? Four, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 3. So my thinking is we actually want to depopulate. So I'm just thinking. I think I have the solution in my brain, but I'm tired of working on this question. But if we have something like this, right? So if we just populate this, we can pop the rest of them like a stack, right? After it's being converted to a sorted array. If we have something like this, right? You know, so if we have this and we check, so -1, this is fine. So the current counter is 1, right? So we put -1, 0, 1. This is what the sequence array will look like. But it will technically, because there's nothing after this, we should scrap this array, right? And we should have another sequence array. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? And what we can do is just check the length of this one or the length of this one. So in this case, the length is 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Return the one that has the higher sequence length. This is actually the solution, right? There's probably a smarter way to do it with like a stack or a queue, and then you remove the rest and just take the present ones, but this is what I would do. So instead of always populating this to one array, you can do something like this, right? So instead of always just appending this to the sequence array, if this is true, right, you can have a counter almost like sequence array counter. Set this to 0. If sequence array, if index is 0, if there's a break, right? So equals next number, append, if there's anything else, if sorted array at next index doesn't equal to the next number, we just increment the sequence array counter by 1, and then we append by the sequence array counter. The real question is, what does this look like, right? Sequence array counter. I think if I can just change this, we do it, because essentially I want to create like a 2D array, right? So this is held under like an array, right? We need to figure this out. this is definitely not the right way of going about it because it's out of index, right? Oh, we just populate this into a local array. Sorry. Right, bucket this. Let's do all of this stuff. Yeah, so this should be in its own array, and this should be in its own array, including 3, which is not coming up. So yeah, I think that's the solution, is to have this essentially, and then whatever the length is bigger, you return the one with higher length. I'm gonna check the solution because I need to get back to my day job, but I'm pretty sure this is the answer. We came to the answer after ages. So brute force, you can sort it, which is what I did. But you can use a hash set or a hash map. The brute force does a streak or something. Let's do the sorting. I feel like sorting's quite not bad. Hash set looks cool. So in this case, what is the solution that they have for sorting do, right? Return 0, res equals 0. Res is just the, what is res? Something. So yeah, they sort it. So nums.sort. You have a current number. You have a streak. And they loop through. Y 0. Current doesn't equal nums. Current is set to the num, streak is 0. Then they loop through again. If I is less than the length of nums, increase the streak, increase the current. I want to run this and see what their solution looks like. We're getting close. So they have a thing called a streak, right? Like the streak of how many is going. I'm pretty sure. Let's have a look. Oh, it's bugging out. This is actually a really fun question, and I've really enjoyed doing this one.
The first neighbor, right? That line does not exist in our set, so let the sequence any longer. So now let's continue through the array sequences. We made this problem to visit subsequence. Or the longest, and it works to see that it works.
So they create a set for nums and nums if n minus 1 is not number in set. So if it's not the start of the sequence, loop through and check n plus length in num set. Longest equals max length longest, return longest. This is crazy. I need to figure this out. Cool. I'm gonna end this here for today. I'll save my code for now, and I'll come back and finish this later. I need to get back to do some actual work. I think I got the solution though. They're managing a streak, right? This is a streak of 1, this is a streak of 1, this is a streak of 4. I just wonder how conceptually he wrote it, right? You know? Oh, the streak, I guess. And then you probably yeah, it's kind of similar, right? In this case, streak for me is just the length, right? So this is also technically a streak, right? I'm just keeping a record of the length of the subarray. This would solve it, but you're managing multiple arrays. I think their way that neetcode did it is significantly better. But we got there eventually, slowly, which is cool. At least we passed the initial 15 out of however many, right? Yeah. So we're getting there. I think I think we'll be fine actually, because we do take into account of negative numbers as well. But I need to get back to my day job. So that was it for today. I may come back later and just fix it and then submit it. So at least I'm done the neetcode roadmap. I just need to do this last and I'll be done. So yeah, pretty good. All right, I will probably start again tomorrow.